Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wargiven Racing Podcast. This is episode 21, and it is covering the Sebring weekend preview for some endurance sports car racing. So, quickly going to some track history. Sebring is a 17-turn road street airfield course that is notorious for its bumps and narrow track. An example of the bumps catching someone out was Jimmy Johnson is only his second IMSA race last year, hitting the bumps in the Sunset Bend turn, which is the final corner, and it just caused his car to spin right around. The track itself opened in 1950 and is one of the homes of American motorsport. Actually, I believe the first Formula One U.S. Grand Prix was actually held at Sebring, but because of where it is, smack dab in the middle of the Florida Panhandle, and legitimately the middle of nowhere, it got moved out to Riverside Raceway in California in following years. So kind of unfortunate, but then again, not surprising. This is an absolute classic of a track, and if you take a look at the track map here, which is gracefully brought to us by Racing Images, um, and it's or my bad, Racing Circuits. I can read. You can see that it kind of looks like a backwards version of Spielberg, the Austrian F1 track, but this one is on half of part of it's on an airfield. It's not real. It doesn't use the airfield runway anymore, or the active runway, I believe, anymore. But it definitely uses a lot of the taxiways and roads around it. But the two races this weekend are the 1,000 miles of Sebring from WEC, and so this is the 10th edition of that race, which is also their season opener as they have 36 cars entered into it. And then it is the 70th running of IMSA's 12 Hours of Sebring, the second leg of the unofficial endurance, Triple Crown after the 24 Hours of Daytona and, before the 24-hour of Le Mans. And there are 53 entries, up 10 from last year's 43. So it is quite impressive to see IMSA, growing this much, especially with the fact that, they have a new category coming next year. Next year is going to be even higher. It's kind of insane. But anywho, we move on. First, covering the World Endurance Championships race, the 1,000 miles of Sebring. A quick season overview, as there's no individual season preview for the WEC on the channel, so just overviewing it really quickly. Sebring is the first of 6 races with classic tracks such as Spa, Le Mans, Monza, Fuji, and Bahrain. The remaining 5. All of these races are either 6 hours or longer, with Monza, with Le Mans being the 24-hour of Le Mans, the biggest sports car race in the world, and prestige and practically everything. And then this is the first race at Sebring in the Le Mans Hypercar era, as the past 2 years the race was canceled. In 2020, obviously, this race was about to happen when it got canceled in the final year of the LMP1 cars. And then last year, it was originally scheduled to be the opener, but the spike in the United States caused it to be canceled. So this is the first race in 2 years and the first race for the LMH cars. Speaking of which, this is the second year for that class that currently has Toyota, Glickenhaus, Alpine, who's using a grandfathered LMP1 car, and then later in the season, Peugeot will join. So at the moment, there is 4 manufacturers, with a few more rumored ones for this season, with Porsche, Ferrari, possibly joining next year, with either LMH or LMDH cars, as IMSA will go to their LMDH category or GTP class next season. And then the remaining classes are LMP2, which is split up between LMP2 Pro and LMP2 Pro Am, and then the 2 GT classes, which are Le Mans GTE Pro and then Le Mans GTE Am. And so if you take a look, the defending champions are the number 7 from Toyota in LMH, the number 31 WRT in LMP2, The LMP2 Pro-Am champion, the number 29, actually is now racing in IMSA. So, fun fact there. And then the 2 GT titles went to the 51 Ferrari and the 83 Ferrari in Pro and Am, respectively. So, looking at the car count for the prototypes, LMPH has 4 entries in this race with 2 Toyotas, 1 Glickenhaus, and 1 Alpine. Sadly, Peugeot was unable to get their car homologated quick enough for the opener, and then Glickenhaus was unable to field a second entry, although it plans to do so at Le Mans. And then the defending winner of this race, all the way back in 2019, is actually the number 8 Toyota, who is obviously one of the 2 Toyotas on this grid, and the only 2 cars from that race that are still on the grid. LMP2 has 15 cars in this year's 1,000 miles of Sebring. And notable entry is Team Penske as they make their LMP2 debut, preparing for the Porsche LMDH program next year in both IMSA and WEC. And then there are 4 cars that have declared themselves for the Pro-Am competition within LMP2, so that is essentially a separate championship, although they can still win the overall LMP2 category. Going to the Le Mans Grand Touring cars, you have LMGTE Pro with 5 entries, which is up from last year that had 4 entries. This car, I believe either next year in 2023 or 2024, is moving to a more GT3-based car like how IMSA has, which will be nice to see, some more manufacturers make it easier for teams to get in. So the 5 entries are 2 Ferraris, 1 Corvette, which is the reason why the Corvette team in IMSA is down to 1 car on a full-time basis, and then 2 Porsches. The defending race winner from 2019 is the 91 Porsche. And then finally, we come to LMGTE Am. There are 12 entries with 5 Ferraris, 5 Porsches, 3 Aston Martins, and ignore this last sentence. That was something I missed when editing. So a nice, stable group of cars. A few of the cars actually competed in the 24 Hours of Daytona, or their organization competed in that. I know Northwest AMR, who races in WEC full-time, competed over in the 24 Hours of Daytona last time out in IMSA. So obviously, IMSA's GT Am car count's a bit down because of WEC starting and having the race on the same weekend. Another notable thing that is supposed to be that bottom line for LMGTE Am is that there is a all-female crew running a Porsche, the Iron Dames, or they're either in a Porsche or Ferrari. I don't want to, say without fully knowing, but they are looking to get their first victory, which I believe would be the first victory for an all-female crew in a WEC race, which is, I'm hoping it happens because, that's a great achievement for women in motorsport. Now, leaving behind the 1,000 miles of Sebring, we move on to, like I mentioned, the second leg of the Endurance Crown, Triple Crown. It's the 12 Hours of Sebring. Your prototype car count in the DPI category, it's the same as last race with 7 cars. A lot of driver changes, though. Notable drivers: Kevin Magnussen, Jimmy Johnson, Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, who typically run the endurance portions of these races, cannot due to IndyCar and now F1 conflicts for Kevin Magnussen. So a lot of substitute fill-in drivers there for this race. But JDC Miller Motorsports and their number 5 Cadillac won last year in a shocking, in quite a shock, as they were at one time multiple laps down, and they ended up coming back to win. In LMP2, we have PR1 Matheson Motorsports as the defending winners. And, they had quite a little bit of a disappointing Daytona 24 Hours in which both their cars early on were fast, were up in front, and then they just fell away due to mechanical issues and crash damage and whatnot. So hopefully they can repeat this race, um, and take the checkered flag here as the first LMP2 car. Good news for the LMP2 category: there are 3 additional entries in this year's race compared to last year's race, so that's nice to see. LMP3, Ligier and Core Autosport are the defending winners. And then, like I mentioned, another good sign for the class. It is up 3 cars to 10. Both LMP2 is down from the Daytona 24 hours, but that's not surprising considering G-Drive Racing, with being a Russian-sponsored team, Russian-run team, and everything going on there. They're not here. They wouldn't have been here anyways, but that does decrease the car count a bit for LMP2. LMP3 goes up as Performance Tech makes their season debut. They were not able to get a car ready for the 24-hour race, but that doesn't hurt them in the championship, as for LMP2 and LMP3, the 24-hour race only counted towards the Michelin Endurance Cup standings and not the full season championship. So if you missed that race or didn't do well there, it doesn't really hurt you long term for those 2 categories. Now moving on to GTD Pro and their car count. This is where we see the biggest difference. We see a +6, and this has to do with the change in category. Porsche and WeatherTech Racing are the defending winners. Again, last year was the last season of GT Le Mans. So obviously these are now GT3 base cars, but this is the all professional lineups. So the cars not present from Daytona are the number 4 Corvette, which is the 64 in the World Endurance Championship, running there on Friday. KCMG's Porsche, who was battling for the win, laid on with Pfaff Motorsports and their Porsche, and came up short. And then WeatherTech's third car that had Austin Cindric, who later on at Daytona won the Daytona 500. They're not present, but there was the addition of Wayne Taylor Racing and Racer Edge Motorsports teaming up to add an Acura to the entry list, making the manufacturers in GTD Pro a total of 8, at least having 1 car in it. Now moving on to GTD AM. Porsche and Pfaff Motorsports are the defending winners. Obviously, Pfaff cannot win, as Pfaff is in the GTD category this season. They are, again, a plus in car count from last year. They are up 4 cars, even though they lost 5 cars, primarily due to WEC competition commitments. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, commitments. And then a team that actually missed the 24 hours, Paul Miller Racing, who I believe finished runner-up or in 3rd place last year in their Lamborghini effort in the full season standings, was not able to make the 24 hours of Daytona because of supply chain problems getting their new BMW M4. So they are making their 2022 debut with that new car. And we'll see how it goes. I don't think it'll go very well. BMW really struggled at Daytona in both GT categories. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them really struggle, at least for a good portion. They might pick it up at the end of the race, and it, could put them into contention. I don't really think it will. You may be noticing I'm not even doing predictions for this race. Legitimately, there's no way to predict who's going to do well at Sebring. Just the nature of the track. It's like you're trying to race at Monaco, and then it's bumpy, and then it's, an endurance race, so it's 12 hours long, and then it goes into night, and it's in Florida, so it could rain. I'm not even going to take an opportunity to predict this race, although from last year it was a fantastic race and a must-see if you are a sports car endurance racing fan. It does not matter. This race has it all, and it's an absolute spectacle to see, 5 different classes of cars at 5 different speeds going around such a small track. So anywho, that wraps up that. So now we move on to just some basic information for the upcoming two races. The 1,000 miles of Sebring starts tomorrow at 12 p.m. and can be found on Motor Trend, the World Endurance Championship app, or Motorsport TV, depending on where you live. Actually, the WEC app doesn't matter, but they don't provide um, television coverage. They just have live timing, and they have a lot of data and car. You can watch in cars on the app. If you're in the United States and have a Motor Trend account, that is where you will find this race. If you are not in North America, you will be able to find the race on Motorsport TV. Again, the race starts at 12 p.m. Eastern, which since we just had, we just jumped forward an hour, which means I believe that's 4 p.m. UK time. Hopefully I'm not wrong. But yeah, that's going to be tomorrow. It's going to be, again, a great race. Not as intense as, the IMSA just because of the different amount of cars, but it's still going to be a really good race. Really nice to see if, Glickenhaus or Alpine can challenge Toyota, because last year they really couldn't. So that'll be nice to see. The 1,000 miles roughly equivalates to about 8 hours, so it's about, 2/3 the length of the IMSA race. But speaking of the IMSA race, the 12 Hours of Sebring, that starts 10 a.m. EST on Saturday, and can be found continuously on Peacock from the very beginning of the race, with coverage on USA Network starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern and running till the end of the race. I'm really looking forward to both races, and it's going to be fantastic. Endurance racing is just constant. There's nothing like it. Sure, NASCAR and to an extent IndyCar and ovals, you see a ton of passing in terms of lapping the field, and when they really get going on their green flag runs. But there is sports cars, it's like 5-6 laps and bam, there's cars, traffic everywhere. And that's what makes it unique. To my mind, there's never a boring moment of endurance racing. So I highly encourage that you check it out this weekend if you're able to. I will be recapping both of these races in an episode of the Wargiven Racing podcast at the beginning of next week. And then stay tuned to other episodes of the Wargiven Racing podcast coming out later today and then tomorrow, which will cover NASCAR, Formula One, and IndyCar, all of which who raced this weekend. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. If you liked the podcast, hit that like button. If you are not yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button. If you've got your own predictions for this weekend's race or just anything general about sports car racing, leave it down in the comment section. I really appreciate any of the feedback, any of the support that you guys can give. And yeah, enjoy the racing. Cheers.